Hello, and welcome to In the Cool of the Day. I am your host, Tia Young, and we're going to talk about an important subject today, and that subject would be grief counseling. My guest is Chaplain David P. Miller, who is employed by Evercare Hospice. Please welcome Chaplain Miller to In the Cool of the Day. Chaplain Miller, how are you today?
Just fine.
Good, it's a pleasure to have you.
It's great to be here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, the first thing I've got to ask you is I see a number of letters behind your name, and I'm not familiar with them.
Okay.
Maybe ashamed to say, but I'm not familiar with them. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, STL is an old degree. It's a Sacred Theology license. It's the same thing as an MDiv or a Master's of Divinity.
Oh, okay. All right. All right, so now I'm empowered, I know.
Okay.
Could you tell us just a little bit about your role as chaplain at Evercare, and just tell us what you do and just bring us up to speed on that?
Well, I'm a hospice chaplain, and I visit patients and hospice patients and their families. And I do really a wide variety of things with them. Some people think that we're there just to, for example, to push religion or something like that. That's not at all what we're there for. Some of my patients are religious, or they have a faith tradition, and my role is to help them in whatever their existing faith tradition is.
Okay.
And to support them in that. But many of my patients don't have a faith tradition, or they're not particularly religious. So my role there is to support them emotionally, to support their family emotionally, and sometimes my role is simply they're lonely.
Right.
So my role is to be there, to be a visitor, to talk with them about whatever's interesting to them.
Right. Well, you mentioned religion. Have you noticed that there is any difference in those that are passing who are religiously inclined as opposed to those who don't have a religion at all?
I think there are some differences. I do see some differences. Mm-hmm.
Are you able to talk about that just a little bit?
A little bit. Some people are, when they realize that they're dying, some people still, if they have no faith, for some people, it doesn't disturb them.
Okay.
For others, when they get down to the end, and particularly for their families, it's disturbing.
Right.
If they don't believe that there is a life after death, there's a realization that they're not going to see their loved one again,
Right.
And it can be very upsetting to them.
I'd like to ask, at what point are you brought into, the whole scenario? Is it at the point that a person is maybe in the hospital and it's been determined by the physicians that, they're not going to make it, they're going to pass, and maybe they're transferred to a hospice organization, or, how does that work?
Okay. I normally get involved shortly after they're admitted to hospice.
Okay.
Now, how that happens, a person might have been in the hospital and they're getting ready to be discharged. Their physician may have determined that they're eligible for hospice.
Okay.
That is to say that they have a terminal condition, their life expectancy is less than 6 months.
Okay.
And
is that the litmus test, the 6 months, less than 6 months?
That's the Medicare guideline.
Okay, all right.
Okay, it's a Medicare criteria.
Okay.
And it's a lot more complicated than that, but the medical folks get involved in that. So when there's a medical team, normally a RN, and usually a social worker get involved in the admission, and the family and or the patient are asked at that time whether or not they would like to have a chaplain who visits them regularly.
Okay.
And many of the patients decline that, but many of the patients accept that.
Okay.
And at that point, then I'm notified that they would like chaplaincy, and then I see them shortly after that, and I begin making regular visits.
Okay. So your work is primarily to the person who is actually in the state of passing, and not so much the family?
Both.
You're working with both?
With both.
Are there ever cases where the patient initially decides that they don't want to work with you, but the family does?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Absolutely.
How does that dynamic work?
Sometimes the family would like the chaplaincy, and the patient would not. Sometimes the patient initially declines,
Okay.
and then changes their mind afterwards.
Okay.
So sometimes the family changes their mind afterwards. And there's all kinds of different scenarios here. Oftentimes, a patient or family may say, well, we have our own pastor, and so we're going to get support from our own pastor. We don't need you.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of times that works out fine for them, but sometimes it doesn't. Professional chaplains are trained. We go through a 1-year course of training after seminary,
Okay.
and then in a 1-year residency in a hospital. So we have quite a bit of training of working with death and dying, and we have a lot of training that the ordinary pastor does not have.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
Right, and most people don't realize it.
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
And so we're a little bit better prepared to deal with this situation. And sometimes a pastor even will suggest to the family that they get the hospice chaplain involved. And sometimes the family will come to that realization themselves.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Do you work with pastors? Are there
Oh, yes,
situations where
yeah.
you're working right
Right.
along with the family's
Absolutely,
pastor?
absolutely. We're not, we really, and you see, in many churches, the pastors are just too busy to be able to spend a lot of time, with every parishioner. So, and in many cases, we're really the hands and feet of their own pastor.
Right. So it's like a link.
Yeah,
Like a networking link
Right.
there. So that works
Yeah.
really well. Well, how do you deal with children? Because I would think that is in both cases where maybe there is a child, let's say, I'll say 12 years old.
Right.
That is not expected to live.
Well-
And then you've got that child's family. How does that dynamic work?
Our hospice does not take children. We
Oh.
don't take patients who are less than 18.
All right.
However, there are hospices in this area who do. And let's face it, that's a challenge.
That is a
It's
challenge,
a
yeah.
very difficult thing to do.
Okay.
What we do have to deal with are the children of our patients. Sometimes we get patients who are young, in their 20s,
That's true.
who have children.
That's right.
And we work with the children. And I'll take this opportunity to mention a wonderful organization, Life with Cancer.
Okay, I've heard of that. I've heard of that organization. That's a national organization?
I don't know if they're national, but
Or
we work with the local office, Life with Cancer, and we have often referred children of cancer patients to them for counseling, and they've done a wonderful job.
Right. I'm just thinking during back in New York when we had the twin buildings hit, and then we also had what happened to us here.
Yes.
Was your organization called in on that at all, or how does that work?
That was before I got here, so I
It was?
really
Okay.
don't know.
Okay, so you're
I
not.
don't know.
Well, tell us a little bit about Evercare. Just the organization itself.
Evercare is part of Optum Health, which is part of United Healthcare which is a
okay.
large insurance
Right,
company.
a very large insurance company. That's really good.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens, you primarily are dealing with the person that is passing and the family. What about the bereaved, after the fact? Is there a different department or a different
Right.
group that works with that
Right.
element?
After the person has died, then for 13 months, the family receives bereavement counseling services.
For 1 year?
For,
Over a year.
13 months.
Yeah, 13 months.
And so we have bereavement counselors, bereavement coordinators who follow up with the families for that period of time.
Right. Do you work with the?
And
are you working with them?
it's really hand in glove.
Okay.
And I would mention, you were talking about children. The bereavement coordinator who I work with, who was not able to be here today,
Okay.
has a counseling background, and it's with counseling with children. So when we do have these cases of where where the patient has children, a lot of times she gets involved in the counseling too.
What are maybe I know that your organization probably has 3 or 4 core mission areas, but can you just talk about maybe a couple of the mission, what the
Okay.
mission of the?
Quality of life
Okay.
is a key thing. To keep patients as comfortable as possible.
Yes.
To try to, most patients want to remain at home.
Yeah.
If they're at home, we want to try, if we can, to keep them at home. We want to keep them where they want to be.
Yes.
We want them to have as high a quality of life as possible and to be as comfortable as
sense.
possible.
That's very caring.
And that includes their spiritual care and their spiritual comfort and their emotional care and emotional comfort, as well as the physical side.
Right. That's very caring. We're going to take a short station break, and we will be returning with Chaplain David Miller as we continue to explore the subject of grief counseling. We'll be right back.
Don't touch that dial. In the cool of the day, we'll be right back.
Welcome back. You're watching In the Cool of the Day with our special guest, Chaplain David Miller of Evercare Hospice. Our subject today is on grief counseling. Chaplain Miller, how does your organization interface with industry professionals? I'm assuming that you're working with doctors and nurses and maybe other specialists in the field. How does that work?
Well, first of all, I'm part of an interdisciplinary team.
Okay.
We currently have 2 teams. For lack of, we couldn't figure out what to call them, so we call them blue and red.
Blue and red.
Yeah, creative, well, not very, but blue and red. I'm on the blue team. And so we have a medical director who's an MD.
Okay.
And then we have a number of RNs, an LPN, and then we also have CNAs, certified nurse assistants, who go out and take care of patients.
Right.
And we meet together once a week to talk about our patients. We talk about half of the patients one week and the other half the next week.
Wow. Okay.
So every patient is talked about at least every other week.
Wow.
And so we share all of the information. So all of the information about the patients, all of our notes go into a computer system, and we upload, download all of our notes at least once a day, generally twice a day. And so we all share the notes online, and then we have these meetings when we talk about people. So there's a lot of sharing of information internally. And then we have a lot of our patients who are in nursing homes, assisted living facilities, or occasionally in a hospital. And we then interact with them when they're in those facilities. So when we're in those facilities, we'll chart in their records in addition to our own. And talk, we always touch base with their nurses, if the physician's there, with their folks. So there's a lot of information sharing that goes on.
So I'm assuming that each chaplain has a caseload. Is there
That's right.
a maximum or minimum caseload? Are you able to say, I mean, do you have hundreds at a time on your case?
No, it's not hundreds, but
Okay.
the benchmark, typically it's 35 to 45 patients.
Wow, that's a lot. I'm thinking, just using my own personal situation, I had 2 deaths in the family of close members. One was my stepfather, and I can remember towards those ending days, there were times that he was in a hospice situation, but then he would get better, and they would let him come home,
Right.
because he wanted to come home.
Sure.
And while he was home, there were some mornings at 3 and 4 in the morning that we were calling hospice, and not once did we not have someone come
Right.
to us and stay with us. And now you're saying they have a caseload of 35 or 40 people. I'm wondering, are you on 24/7 call? Are you just
Hospice is a 24/7 operation.
okay?
Okay. My cell phone is off on Sunday mornings. That's it.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah.
But then you have a backup and
There
volunteers.
we do have backups, and there are times when I'm officially on call, but push comes to shove, they know they can call me.
They can call you.
Yeah.
Do you guys ever get burned out?
We could get burned out. It doesn't happen. I don't know very many chaplains who get burned out.
Really?
Because one of the things that, I was talking with you about the training that we receive, it's called CPE, Clinical Pastoral Education.
Okay.
And one of the first things that they teach us in there is self-care. That you have to take time off. You have to take time to pray.
Yes.
You have to take time to relax. You have to take time to take care of yourself so that you don't burn out.
So that you don't burn out. So there's not a high degree of,
No.
just really going flip.
No.
That's
No.
good. And we didn't sense that. I mentioned earlier that I had 2 situations. The second situation was my brother, who passed about a year ago. And I would have to say he was not in a hospice situation. He had a prostate cancer, and then about a year into that, he had an ischemic stroke. So he was dealing with 2 very
Two
different
different
things.
things, yeah.
And we were taking care of him at home. And I remember the night that, which was his last night here, we didn't know that. We knew he was sick, and we knew that, this was a possibility, but none of us, we weren't really prepared for it.
Right.
Even though we kind of
Yeah.
were, but then we weren't. But that was about the deepest hurt and pain that I have ever experienced. I can't
Yeah.
even describe what we went through. And I thought it would be something that I could get over fairly quickly, but it's been over a year, almost 2 years now. And there are some days that I never forget it. There are some days that it's better than others, and then there are other days it's like it just happened.
Yes.
So using myself as an example, I think I'm okay, but then I'm thinking, well, maybe I still need some type of counseling. I mean, what
Right.
can you give us some guidelines to points that maybe we know we're not handling the situation as well?
I think it's always difficult. If you love someone, you make yourself vulnerable when you love someone.
That's true.
And so you get hurt.
Right.
And I think what you're describing is just so typical. And there are days when it just feels fresh and raw, and it hurts.
Right.
And there are other days when it's there, but it's not right in your face.
Right.
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 My father died 5 years ago, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about him. But it doesn't really hurt that bad every day. But there are days when my heart aches.
And then there are days that you can laugh about certain things. You'll see something or a picture or something comes up that maybe is totally unrelated, you think, and then you'll think about something with a
Right.
person, and it'll be a happy thought.
Right.
So I'm wondering, are these normal feelings?
Yes.
And you mentioned earlier about your faith. I know for me that has helped me, that has helped
Oh, yeah.
sustain me. And I'm even wondering how awful and lonely it must be or could be for those who don't have that.
Yes.
And kind of vacillating back and forth on that end. So what I'm experiencing is normal? Is
Yes.
that what you're saying? It's normal?
Yes. What I would mention is that one of the things that the bereavement coordinators do is they run grief support groups. And just because you weren't on our hospice doesn't mean that you couldn't come to one of our bereavement support groups.
Tell me about that. Tell me about grief
Well,
support, because
Okay.
this is the first time I've heard of that.
These are groups that meet at various locations around in Northern Virginia.
Okay.
And they have facilitators that are bereavement coordinators, or it could be a chaplain, or it could be a team of the two.
Okay.
And they just meet like typically once a month. And people who have lost a loved one come, and it's an opportunity. There'll be different topics that they'll talk about each time, different aspects of grief. It gives you but it's not so much a teaching thing as an opportunity for the participants to talk about their own experiences and what they're feeling.
Okay.
But there is enough of a program there that will say, well, how do you feel about this particular aspect?
All right.
So it will prompt you enough to get you talking about a particular thing, a type of emotion that you might be experiencing.
Then you
So-
have a chance to see if others are feeling the way you
Right.
do, or you may go in and see that maybe you're not so bad. I mean, somebody
Right.
else is having it.
Well, that's
tough,
right.
worse.
Or yes, and I think groups are powerful, and I think
That's
it's and people can help each other. And I would also mention it's not just that Evercare has these groups, but I think all of the hospices offer these groups. And so if we don't have one in your area, then another hospice probably does. And if you check around at like churches and nursing homes and assisted living facilities, and check around with those facilities in your area, you'll probably be able to locate.
one. Well, if our viewers would just like to chat with you or talk to you, how can they get in contact with you?
I don't know. I don't remember our main number, but
Okay.
but they can call just our main number
Just your
for
main
Evercare.
number for Evercare Hospice. Okay,
Yep.
that's good. So what are the maybe 4 or 5 things that you would tell those who, you've said that my symptoms that I'm having are pretty normal, but what gets kind of out of the normal zone that people should be really concerned about, even if it's a loved one that...
Certainly if anyone feels like they're going to hurt themselves.
Oh, does that happen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. If somebody feels so distraught that they.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So somebody, if somebody's just distraught and just crying.
Like an
inconsolable day after day after day after day. Yeah, I think they need to talk with someone.
Right.
Yeah, and I think I think it's always good to talk with someone anyway. I think even in the normal range, that it's useful to talk with someone.
We talk with someone.
And I would encourage people to talk with their pastor if no one else.
Right. And sometimes people just hold things in, but that's when I think it probably
Right.
gets bad, when you don't share it with someone.
Yeah.
Because there's someone out there that will share that
That's right.
that grief with you. They may not know
Yeah.
100%
Right.
of how you feel, but
Getting those feelings out is
Yeah.
is really important.
talking about
Talking about them.
it is important.
Yeah, and talk about them in your family. Talk about them with your friends.
Right. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, our time is up. It has certainly
Oh,
been
wow.
a pleasure to have you here with us today, and anytime that you want to come back and share with us, we would appreciate it so much.
Okay.
We look forward to having you back on the show real soon.
It's my
and we
pleasure.
hope that Beth feels better so
Yes.
she can come back. I'd like to
Okay.
have her on the show.
Okay.
There are things on this earth that we're going to experience. You know, each one of us, we're going to live, and each one of us one day will pass into eternity. You know, everybody out there in the viewing audience will experience the loss of at least one person that is dear to us. But grief is real, and we have to know that there are others that are out there that will share these feelings with us. If you feel that you need help, don't hesitate to contact a pastor. Call 911 if you need to. Check out the grief counseling centers in your area. And, you know, just don't go through this experience alone. If you'd like to contact me about the show, or if you want to find out how you can be a guest on this show, please write me at inthecooloftheday2013@gmail.com. Thank you so much for watching In the Cool of the Day.